Have you ever been in the middle of a high-stakes moment? Maybe a crucial presentation, a difficult drive, or a decisive point in a sports match, and suddenly found yourself overthinking your own body movements? You freeze. Your smooth, automatic actions become clunky and awkward. You know exactly what to do, but for some reason, your body just won't cooperate the way it usually does. This phenomenon, often called choking or getting the yips, isn't just a mental block. It is a fundamental glitch in how our brains process motor commands when we try too hard to control them consciously. But here's the part most people don't realize. This glitch might be triggered not by your nerves, but by the very words used to teach you. For decades, coaches, teachers, and rehabilitation specialists have been giving instructions that might actually be hindering performance rather than helping it. They might say things like, bend your knees, straighten your arm, or engage your core. These sound like helpful, precise commands, but a growing body of scientific evidence suggests that these instructions, known as internal focus cues, might be sabotaging the brain's natural ability to move efficiently. This leads us to a fascinating new clinical trial that is currently exploring this exact mechanism in a specific group of young athletes. The study is titled Internal or External Focus in Girl Volleyball Players and focuses on how different types of attentional focus affect the performance of complex motor skills. It's a piece of research that goes far beyond the volleyball court. It touches on the very core of human motor learning, neuroscience, and how we can unlock better performance in everything from professional sports to physical therapy recovery. Welcome to a deep dive into the science of human movement and attention. Over the next few minutes, we are going to explore the details of this specific clinical trial, the neurological theories behind it, and why the results could change the way we teach every physical skill imaginable. This is not just about volleyball, it is about the hidden language of the brain. To understand why this specific trial is so important, we first have to look at the problem it addresses. When we learn a new physical skill, whether it's riding a bike, playing the piano, or serving a volleyball, we usually start by thinking about every single movement. We have to consciously tell our fingers where to go or our legs how to balance.
This is the cognitive phase of learning. It is slow, error-prone, and mentally exhausting. But as we practice, these movements are supposed to shift into the autonomous phase. They become automatic. You don't think about balancing on a bike anymore. You just ride. However, even experienced athletes and movers can regress. Under pressure or when given the wrong type of instruction, the brain can slip back into that clunky, conscious mode of control. This is where the distinction between internal focus and external focus becomes critical. An internal focus of attention involves directing the learner's mind to their own body movements. Examples include keep your elbow high, snap your wrist, or extend your legs. These instructions force the brain to monitor the body's biomechanics. In contrast, an external focus of attention directs the learner's mind to the effect of their movement on the environment. Instead of saying, snap your wrist, a coach might say, hit the ball down towards the floor. Instead of extend your legs, they might say, push the ground away. The physical movement might be identical, but the mental target is completely different. The research question that this new trial, led by researchers at Inunu University, is tackling is specifically how these two different modes of thinking impact the performance of young female volleyball players. This matters enormously because adolescent athletes are in a critical window of motor development. They are refining the neuromuscular patterns that will stay with them for life. If standard coaching practices are inadvertently forcing them into a less efficient internal mode of processing, we might be limiting their potential and even increasing the risk of injury due to inefficient movement patterns. Yet, despite years of laboratory research suggesting that external focus is superior, many coaches still rely heavily on internal focus cues. This trial aims to provide the concrete, sport-specific data needed to bridge that gap between the lab and the court. So what exactly are researchers studying in this trial?
The core intervention here is a manipulation of attentional focus. The researchers are not testing a drug or a device. They are testing words. They are testing the impact of language on the motor cortex. The study involves recruiting girl volleyball players and subjecting them to specific drill conditions where the only variable that changes is the instruction they receive. Imagine a player standing at the service line, preparing to execute a jump serve. This is a highly complex motor task. It requires a precise toss, a powerful approach, a coordinated jump, and a rapid arm swing, all timed to contact the ball at the peak of its trajectory. In one condition of the trial, the internal focus condition, the player might be told to focus on snapping your wrist forward or focus on straightening your arm at contact. In the contrasting external focus condition, the same player doing the same serve would be told to focus on hitting the ball to the back corner of the court, or focus on the sound of the hand contacting the ball. The researchers are then measuring the outcomes. They aren't just looking at whether the ball went over the net. They are likely looking at measures of accuracy, consistency, and potentially the kinematics, or speed and fluidity of the limb itself. But here is where things get interesting mechanistically. Why would thinking about the ball be better than thinking about the wrist? The prevailing theory that this trial is testing is called the constrained action hypothesis. Proposed originally by researchers Wolf and Prince, this hypothesis suggests that when you focus internally on your body, you inadvertently interfere with your brain's automatic control processes. You're essentially trying to micromanage a system that runs better on autopilot. It's like a CEO trying to do the job of a factory line worker. It just slows everything down and creates mistakes. When you adopt an external focus, however, you allow the motor system to self-organize. You give the brain a goal, hit the target, and let the subconscious parts of the nervous system figure out the complex muscle firing patterns required to achieve it. This promotes automaticity. The movement becomes smoother, faster, and more efficient. This trial is designed to see if this theory holds up in the chaotic, dynamic environment of a real volleyball training session with young athletes. Let's break down how the trial works in more detail. According to the study protocol information, the researchers are recruiting girl volleyball players to participate in these experimental sessions.
The study design is likely a randomized controlled setup, possibly a crossover design where participants experience both conditions to serve as their own controls, or a parallel group design where one group trains with internal cues and another with external cues.
Participants will perform specific volleyball tasks. While the exact drills might vary, they typically involve the fundamental skills of the sport, the serve and the spike, or attack. These are explosive, high-velocity movements where the difference between a good repetition and a bad one is measured in milliseconds and millimeters. Outcomes are measured using precise indicators. Accuracy is usually the primary metric. How close did the ball get to the target? But researchers often look deeper. They might measure movement form, how good the technique looked, though, interestingly, research often shows that external focus improves form even without the athlete trying to fix it. Some studies in this field also use electromyography, or EMG, to measure muscle activity, looking for signs that the external focus group is using less energy to produce the same force, a hallmark of efficiency. In this specific trial, the primary focus appears to be on performance outcomes like accuracy and potentially movement velocity, validating whether simple changes in coaching language can lead to immediate improvements. The participants go through a warm-up, followed by a baseline measurement to establish their current skill level. Then comes the intervention phase. They receive the specific instructions, internal or external, and perform a set number of trials. For example, they might perform 10 serves while focusing on extending the arm, internal, and then, after a washout period to clear their mind, perform 10 serves focusing on hitting the ceiling, external. What makes this trial particularly robust is its setting. By conducting this research with actual volleyball players, rather than just random volunteers in a lab hitting buttons, the study maximizes ecological validity. This means the results are much more likely to apply to the real world of sports training. It answers the question, does this theory actually work when a teenage athlete is standing on the court, holding a ball, trying to perform? Now, let's explore what this could mean. What are the potential outcomes of this study, and why do they matter? The The best-case scenario is that the trial confirms that external focus cues significantly outperform internal focus cues in this demographic. If the data shows that simply changing a sentence from "move your hand" to "move the ball" results in greater accuracy and consistency, it would provide a powerful, free, and immediate tool for coaches everywhere.
Think about the implications for coaching education. Currently, many coaching manuals are filled with biomechanical descriptions. Coaches are taught to look at angles and joints. Consequently, they speak to athletes about angles and joints. If this study supports the constrained action hypothesis, it would argue for a radical shift in how coaches communicate. Instead of correcting body parts, coaches would become architects of the environment, designing cues that direct attention away from the body and toward the goal. But even a neutral or negative result would be scientifically valuable. If the researchers find no difference, or if they find that internal focus is actually better for these specific girls, it would complicate the theory in a necessary way. Some researchers have suggested that beginners might need an internal focus initially to understand the basic mechanics before they can shift to an external focus. Since this trial looks at girl volleyball players, who could range from novices to elites, the results could help clarify when to use which type of cue. It might depend on the skill level of the athlete. Furthermore, the implications extend to rehabilitation. Physical therapists often tell patients to squeeze the glute or engage the quad, internal. If the principles from this volleyball study hold true across human movement, rehabilitation might be faster and more effective if therapists instead used cues like push the floor away or reach for the wall. This study adds a brick to the wall of evidence supporting a more subconscious, goal-directed approach to movement science. While we discuss these high-performance interventions, it is also important to consider other available solutions for motor learning and health. Not every improvement comes from a specific coaching cue. General physical preparedness plays a huge role. For the general population, simply engaging in regular, varied physical activity, like walking, swimming, or recreational sports, helps maintain the brain's motor pathways. You don't need to be a volleyball player to benefit from external focus. Next time you are walking for exercise, instead of thinking about contracting your hamstrings, try thinking about pushing the sidewalk behind you. You might find you walk faster and with less effort. This principle of shifting attention outward is a universal hack for human movement. Now let's touch on the safety and ethics of this trial. One of the great things about this kind of research is that it is non-invasive. There are no drugs, no surgeries, and no dangerous procedures. The intervention is purely pedagogical. It's about teaching. However, ethical oversight is still rigorous. The researchers must ensure that the participants, who are likely minors given the Girl Volleyball Players title, have proper consent from guardians. They must also ensure that the instruction given doesn't inadvertently cause frustration or mental fatigue. The internal focus condition, effectively asking athletes to overthink their movements, can be frustrating because it often leads to worse performance. Researchers have to manage this carefully, ensuring that participants understand the nature of the experiment and that their self-esteem or confidence isn't negatively impacted by a temporary dip in performance during the internal trials. This careful, ethical approach is what distinguishes a clinical trial from a simple coaching experiment. It ensures the data is reliable and the participants are protected. This trial represents the meticulous, often quiet work of sports science. It doesn't have the flash of a new pharmaceutical drug, but its potential impact is massive because it scales instantly. If we learn the best way to speak to the brain, we can improve the performance of millions of athletes, musicians, and rehabilitation patients literally overnight, just by changing our words. To summarize, the clinical trial, Internal or External Focus in Girl Volleyball Players, is investigating whether directing attention to the effect of a movement, external, is superior to directing attention to the body movements themselves, internal. Based on the constrained action hypothesis, researchers expect that the external focus will allow for more automatic, accurate, and efficient performance. This study serves as a crucial test of that theory in the real-world laboratory of youth sports. As we wait for the final published results, it serves as a reminder of the complexity of the human brain. We are not just machines of muscle and bone. We are driven by perception and intent. The way we think changes the way we move. Disclaimer: this content is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical or professional coaching advice. The trial discussed is a specific research study and results can vary.
Always consult with a qualified coach, physical therapist, or medical professional before making changes to your training or rehabilitation program. If you found this deep dive into the neuroscience of performance fascinating, you might want to look at how you cue your own movements in daily life. Are you overthinking the step, or are you just walking to the door? Sometimes the best way to gain control is to give it up to the wisdom of the body. Keep learning, stay curious, and keep moving.